to say. And there's a green one,
and a pink one,
and a blue one,
and a yellow one, and they're all
made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
Welcome to Newry, gateway to beauty, where the moor and mountains wave to Sleeve Gullion proud and brave. Welcome to Newry. Hello, my name's Tommy Sands, and I hope you have the time, taste and temperament to stay with me for the next while, and while away a while of an evening with the best of music, song, crack and diversion. That song, Welcome to Newry, I wrote that in Newry with 2 schools from here. And over the next few weeks, we'll be talking about different songs that were written around here and indeed sometimes far away from here. Because the people upstairs here in Destination Newry, DNTV, asked me to talk about songs and some of the stories behind the songs and how they came to be written. And I have a very special guest on the programme tonight. Her name is Carrie Suchard, and we'll be speaking to Carrie after a while. But the song I'm going to sing you, it began life in a place called Godfrey Daniels in Bethlehem in Pennsylvania. It's a club there where folk singers have been going for years. And I was singing, and I noticed down to my left 2 women making something from paper. I didn't know what they were doing. But I finished the concert anyway. And at the end, one of the women came up. Her name was Patty Moore. And she handed me what she called a paper crane. A crane, a bird made from paper. And she told me a story. She told me a story about a little girl called Sudako. She was just a baby when the bombs dropped in Hiroshima. She survived that, but some years later she developed leukemia as a result of the radiation. And she's very ill. But there's an old belief in Japan, and that is if you can make 1,000 paper cranes, you can have whatever wish that you want. In fact, the crane is also sacred in the Irish tradition as well. So she began to make the paper cranes because she wanted to live, and she also wished that bombs would never come again. This is a song. It almost wrote itself. There's actually a monument to this little girl in the Peace Park in Hiroshima today. The song is called Sudako and 1,000 Paper Cranes. Sudako was a baby when the cruel bombs were burning and the homes of Hiroshima turned to hell. But somehow she kept living, and she seemed to laugh and play just like any little girl of 10. But lately she's complaining of dizzy spells and headaches, and she's praying for an end to all these pains. And she hears the old folks whisper, your wishes will be granted if you make 1,000 paper cranes. Sudako, let me make a paper crane for you. Sudako, let me help to make your dreams come true. She doesn't wish for chocolate cakes or dolls with coloured dresses, as lovingly she folds each paper crane. The only prayer she whispers, may this sickness go away, and poison bombs don't ever come again. Her hands are growing slower, but her hopeful heart is racing. She's made 600 cranes and 44. But the headaches keep returning, her fingers, they are burning. She whispers, I just can't make any more. Sudako, let me make a paper crane for you. Sudako, let me help to make your dreams come true. The children leave the classroom, they're crowding round her bedside. They're making paper cranes with loving speed. Soon there'll be 1,000 and your wishes will come true. Sudako, are you smiling in your sleep? The pains of life are leaving, and the only dream she's dreaming is a dream that bombs will never fall again. And that's a dream they carry as they gather at her graveside and gently place 1,000 paper cranes. Sudako, let me make a paper crane for you. Sudako, let me help to make your dreams come true.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a song that almost wrote itself, as I say, and is a monument to the little girl in Hiroshima. You've been there, Carrie.
I have been several times, yes. I've been to the monument of Sudako, where she is standing, holding up her hands, sort of releasing these paper cranes. And children come by the thousands with 1,000 paper cranes that they've prepared and put all around this monument. And in 2010, your song sounded there. There was a special session on disarmament at the United Nations in New York, and a young boy who sang Sudako, who had heard you sing in concerts for us, had learned this song and performed it for a delegation of Japanese people that were at the United Nations. They invited him to come to Hiroshima, and so at the end of the celebration commemorating the bombing on August 6th, he stood in front of 10,000 people and sang this song that you really have given to the world to remind us a child can lead them, and one child can make a huge difference by having the dream that there would be no more war.
You know, Carrie, a song is a little bit like a child in a way. When you write it, it goes off on its own, and you never know what road it's going to go up or who it might meet. Just a few weeks ago, there was a man arrived at my door in River, and his name was Bertolt Zurin, and he comes from Baden-Württemberg or Stuttgart in Germany, and he heard the song, and he works in a sheet metal factory, and he decided to get together with the people, the workers in the sheet metal factory, to make 1,000 cranes, not from paper, but from sheet metal and copper and so on. And he handed me this. This is one of 1,000 that he made. Isn't it beautiful?
So beautiful.
And they made
so beautiful.
They sold these paper or these cranes, the copper cranes, and they made 30,000 pounds, and they sent it over to Fukushima to build an indoor recreation room for all the children, because the children can't go outside because of the radiation there today, as you know.
I'm sure that this gives an enormous amount of hope to the people of Fukushima, but I think also for people that we work with who are trying to listen to the same dream from children from so many countries. This also is such a symbol of hope and will help this irradiated world perhaps be healed.
Well, you know, Carrie Schuchart, is that the proper pronunciation? Schuchart. Songs have led me to you as well. And yourself and your husband, John, have been in and out of prison a fair amount of times, not for starting trouble, but for trying to stop it. Before we go any further, tell us about the time that yourself and John went to see President Bush the First.
Right. Bush the First had just presided over the bombing of the Amaria shelter near Baghdad, February 14th, 1991. And you may remember that was a Finnish-constructed shelter for women and children. And it was the first time that bunker-busting bombs had been used to that degree, and 1,200 people were incinerated at that bombing. And when that happened, it was just before what in America is called President's Day, where it's a kind of amalgamation of Washington and Lincoln's birthdays. So it happens on the Monday in about the second week of February. So we heard that on the Sunday, President Bush would have his daily photo op at this small congregational church near his summer home in Kennebunkport, Maine, that he visited sometime during the year too. So John and I thought a great deal about it and were anguished by what was happening in the war and the amount of censorship in America, where there was just such little possibility to speak out against the war, and we knew voices weren't heard beyond America for whatever resistance there was. But above all, that the President of the United States was absolutely shielded from hearing any word against the war. So we decided to go to church. We decided to drive up to Kennebunkport, which was about 2 hours north, a little less, of where we live on the coast of Massachusetts, north of Boston. And we had banners in the car and thought that we would hold them outside the church. Stop the war, stop the bombing. This is just illegal, immoral event. So we went up, and by some amazing power, the gates opened. We were the last car allowed over the bridge. We were ushered along this little road, and we even were able to park right beside the church. So John thought, well, let's be outside the church with these banners. And then I had this feeling that there was sort of a mellow mood about us and no suspicion. John had worn a shirt and tie and suit, which really helped. And so I said, I think we should just go into church. So we went to a simple little metal detector, went all the way down front, sat behind the row of Sunday school children. Choir was rehearsing. In came President Bush, George the First, with Barbara just 20 feet away from us. And the service began with the rousing chorus of people that had been preparing for this annual event of President's Day, with the president ever more, looked up to because he was a president presiding over war. And then the minister began prayers, and she said, does anyone have anything we need to pray for today? And several people in the congregation mentioned relatives with illnesses or friends who had lost a job. And then, kind of like a spiritual ray rising, John, my husband, who had an incredible history in life of working absolutely totally against war and the weapons of war, he stood, and sitting there, it felt as if he just rose and rose, and he said, I have a prayer, I have a concern for the 24 million people of Iraq, of whom 2/3 are children like these children here. And we are bombing them to death, at which point someone from behind us stood up and said, shut up, this is a church of God.
How
And the
dare you
rest
talk
of the
about peace here?
congregation, exactly, total perfect way of describing the stance of the churches. This is a church of God, shut up, when it has to do with immediately feeling with empathy the situation of the people of Iraq. So the whole congregation rose. John was still standing. I was seated. By then the Secret Service had been brought in behind us. The local police chief was beside me. The Sunday school children had been evacuated to safety. And the whole congregation sang this great anthem to war, God Bless America. And really, it was an unrehearsed choral rendition that absolutely was sung with a great passion for the nationalistic supremacy of this warring nation. So then the minister came and approached John and me and said, I will listen to you, and said to the people, we must listen to those who speak, even if we don't agree with it. They may even be right. And that gave us great hope. And John said, will you preach the gospel today? And she said, I will. And then the service went on, and she gave a sermon welcoming the Washington branch of the family, George and Barbara, and going on at great length about the brotherly love, I think it was, brotherly love. So we realized that the voice of the children of Iraq, of the people of Iraq, wasn't being heard. And so when the minister said, we will now say the Our Father, John rose and said, before we pray the Our Father, at which point from all sides converged, Secret Service, state troopers, local police, and they put their hands around John's mouth and threw him to the floor at my feet. And there ensued then what you may or may not know, the tune to this choral piece, the Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And it's a piece with a great crescendo in it. And the choir, poor things, had probably rehearsed this for months and months, because they were leading the bushes in this cosmic prayer.
John was on the ground at this stage.
John was on the ground in front of me, hardly able to breathe, and I was holding him for all my strength so that they wouldn't take him in a very awful way. The cops were beside me here, and the Secret Service was holding John, and one of them around me. And then the choir began this, for thine is the kingdom, and you heard this voice, get ready, and the power coming from the left, and the glory forever, take him. And they took him and threw him up in the air. I was whooshed to my feet. They then threw him into the aisle, and then just moved him down the aisle, out of the church. I was right behind him. And he came to the door of the church and realized that something was happening here. And that namely was that every day in the war, there would be this photo op for President Bush, which would appear on the front page of the paper, so that we would all kind of revere the president at war. And that was supposed to happen at about 10 of 10. And so the whole way down the road behind barriers was the International Press Court. And they had been told at 10 of 10, you will be moved forward for your picture of George and Barbara exiting the church on the weekend of President's Day. So as John got to the door of the church and started to be pivoted to the left, I was there, and the entire press corps had been moved forward to get their picture of Barbara and George, and instead there was John and Carrie. And John, who has a mighty, mighty voice, he realized instantaneously what was happening, and all he could think of in that split second were the words of Archbishop Romero of El Salvador before his assassination during the war. And he called out, just with like an arc of sound to the world, in the name of God, I beg you, I beseech you, stop the bombing, stop the war.
That picture went all around the world, and of course it was in television stations. I think maybe we might have it, a little bit of it there, Andrew.
So during the intercessory prayer, there was a period of silence and intercessory prayer. I stood up and said, before we sing the Lord's Prayer, I have a word. And it was just that statement for which I was assaulted by the chief of police, forced down on the floor, and held down while the congregation rose and sang the Lord's Prayer. After they finished the Lord's Prayer, then these two police officers and two Secret Service agents picked me up, and just two on either side of me and on the back. I was expelled from the church. The weight of my body was not even on my own legs. They just flew me out there, out the front door. And that's when, for the first time, I lifted my voice and spoke over my shoulder as I was going out. I am the voice of the voiceless. In the name of God, stop the bombing, stop the massacre.
Stop the bombing! Stop the massacre! In the name of God, stop the massacre! Stop the bombing of Iraq! God abhors this bloodshed!
I was charged with disorderly conduct, specifically making a loud and unreasonable noise.
And that was a picture that went all around the world. What happened next?
John was thrown into the Secret Service car, and they said, you have to follow us, we're going to the police station. So I went into our car with all these banners and peace signs and everything, and followed, breaking speed limits, to this little local Kennebunkport police station. And they had taken John in the back, and then the Secret Service agent assigned to me took me in the front. And he was very polite, very respectful, took my coat off, and then said, all right, do you have any weapons? And I said to him, we're here because we're against weapons. And he said, I know, but you just have to understand we're in the middle of this whole thing. Our job is to protect the president. I said, but you have to understand our job is to protect the people. And then they sat me down and did lots of questioning, and then John was questioned in a separate room. And then they took me back to where John was handcuffed and shackled, looking very elegant still in his suit. And he then said that he would be taken to the local prison, and the Secret Service said that I was safe, I could go home. So we said goodbye, and he was taken into custody at the York County Jail, and I went back to the House of Peace in Ipswich. And he was held, because it was a holiday, the arraignment was only on the Tuesday, so he fasted while he was in prison, and was in a cell with many, many very poor people that were there for many minor offenses. And he was able to get a call through to me that evening, and he said, maybe you could go to the local paper, or you could go to the National Catholic Reporter and just tell them we tried to lift our voice. And I said, John, they've just called me from Germany and England and Jordan. The prayer has been heard around the whole world. And he was deeply, deeply moved by that. So we went to his arraignment where he was charged with disturbing the peace. And then because he had been a couple of days in jail, they let him go pending his trial, which then happened.
And what was the charge?
The charge was disturbing the peace, and then ultimately found guilty of, quotes, making a loud and unreasonable noise, to wit, stop the bombing. That's actually in the court records. So.
Well, this is just an example, really, of what you've been doing for many years, and you've been arrested many, many times. I suppose the security people in your country would say, well, you know, we need bombs, we need to secure ourselves, and what you're doing is only just sand in the Vaseline of what we're trying to do.
I know of no situation in world history where weapons and bombs really create the peace that ultimately is what's going to keep the people safe. And I think the peace process here in Northern Ireland is an example of that, where ultimately it's hoped that people really understand that it is a process, and that peace is not something that happens just, it has a life of its own. It's not something that happens just in one given moment or one signing of any treaty. And in America, sometimes people have this vision of peacekeepers of the world, and the world that flows into our doors, who are sufferers of the wars that America has perpetrated, has the exact opposite experience. And there is nothing safe about a nuclear weapon. Nothing safe. In fact, the lapses in security around the installations of nuclear weapons, the broken arrows, the near misses where nuclear war has been just hair trigger away, and human error has brought us to the very brink. These are situations that we have to be conscious of, responsive to. We have to find our communities of solidarity to really stand and witness, sometimes kneel and witness even as the cuffs are being put on you. We were arrested out in front of the Westover Air Force Base not too long, you know, in the horrific 2003 shock and awe happened. And we were kneeling and praying, and it was an organized civil disobedience. But as we were, the cargo jets for Iraq were taking off overhead. So we were taken in and jailed. And then we had a trial. And before the trial, we were in the lobby of the courthouse. And the sheriff who had arrested John and me took us aside and said, I need to talk to you. And John, at that witness, had been speaking with a microphone about depleted uranium, the radioactive casings of weapons that come from the warthog. They are dropped, especially Fallujah, which is the greatest irradiated place in Iraq because of that. And the sheriff took us aside and said, I have to tell you before this trial, you were right. I served during the first Gulf War, and I was exposed to the highway of death. And I came back, and my daughter was born with a severe birth defect. And when we brought her to Children's Hospital, the first doctor who saw her said to me, were you exposed to depleted uranium? She has the birth defect, which is immediately recognizable through that exposure.
What you do at the moment in the House of Peace in Ipswich, you bring people who have been injured by those bombs and so on into your own house. You've had about 400 people down through the years from all these different countries. And you link these people up with the hospitality of children from your own place. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, back in 1980, I became a foster mother to children from Vietnam who were part of the boat refugee exodus. And at that time, altogether for 17 years, I had lived in Camp Hill, where I was living with adults with what we here call disabilities or impairments, cognitive difficulties, formerly called mentally handicapped. And when I saw what was happening with the healing of these teenage boys from Vietnam through the beautiful hospitality, care, welcoming, no questions asked acceptance by our friends with so-called disabilities, I was aware of a special chemistry here. And during those 10 years, I also became acquainted with John, who had witnessed against nuclear weapons for the first time in history at the Plowshares 8, 1980, gone into a weapons producing factory at General Electric, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, not far from Godfrey Daniels. And they had disarmed two Mark 12A nose cones on the warheads that only would be assembled later in Texas. And our paths through his trial and imprisonment had come together. I was a single mother then with 3 children. So these paths converged. The power of the witness against the weapons of war, living together with the victims of war, and the welcoming hospitality of people with disabilities. And so we found a very large house near the ocean and started the House of Peace, where all this could come together in community.
Just a song running through my head there. Wouldn't hear your music in the pub your painting stand. Wouldn't read your writing and the band you from the town. But they couldn't stop you dreaming and the victory you've won. For you sowed the seeds of freedom in your daughters and your sons. In your daughters and your sons. In your daughters and your sons. You sowed the seeds of freedom in your daughters and your sons. Carrie Shishart, yourself and John, very well known around the world in what you do. And you're over here in Ireland to not just to look for your roots, you do have roots in Ireland, but St. Bridget is very important for you. And actually, I came across, Steve Cooney gave me a poem last night about St. Bridget. It's called St. Bridget's Beer. And I never heard this one before, but now I know that it's very well known. I'd like to give a lake of beer to God. I'd love the heavenly host to be tippling there for all eternity. I'd love the men of heaven to live with me, to dance and sing. If they wanted, I'd put at their disposal vats of suffering. White cups of love I'd give them with a heart and a half. Sweet pitchers of mercy I'd offer to every man. I'd make heaven a cheerful spot because a happy heart is true. I'd make the men contented for their own sake. I'd like Jesus to love me too. I'd like the people of heaven to gather from all the parishes around. I'd give a special welcome to the women, the 3 Marys of great renown. I'd sit with the men, the women of God, there by the lake of beer. We'd be drinking good health forever, and every drop would be a prayer. She's an amazing woman. And there's links with the older Celtic spirituality and Bridget. Isn't that right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I became interested many, many years ago in Celtic spirituality, and it seems that where you have someone like a Saint Bridget in history and life, you have, because the Celtic consciousness is able to look in, kind of look into the world of spirit and has a possibility of a different kind of vision where, as they say, the veil is thinner in Ireland. So in looking to the realm of the goddesses, I discovered this Brija and tried to learn a little bit about Brija, who really is almost like the Isis figure. This, some would call her the divine Sophia, and legend has it that she was the mighty protectress of all poets, that she was the kind of goddess of culture, Brigantia in Spain. She had this cosmic vision of the world of thought and art and ideas and music and poetry, and was the goddess to protect all that. And so she could find her place, of course, in Ireland, which is the land of poets, in a way, a land where I think art and music can find its soil to flourish in. And so there comes about Bridget of Kildare somewhere around the late 400s. And there's so many legends, and when there's trouble trying to figure out how could she be in all these different places. But the point was, she was born really of a slave mother and a kind of sort of kingly father. And she embodies in herself both those realms. And it's said that when she was a tiny child, she sailed in a curragh to Iona, and I've been there, and last visit was leading a retreat of women, and we climbed the Dunny, and there is this mighty, moving, great body of water, so small in one way, Bridget's Well, the Fountain of Youth, whatever it's called. It's this absolute vessel where these forces of Bridget, who carried the light and the winds, Brija, the goddess, personified not, or maybe by the crane, but also called Brija of the White Swan. And so Bridget of Kildare comes to found her life. You know, the men all around her deemed that she should be married, and legend has it she plucked out her eye and said, "I won't be married." And when they saw what had happened, they took away their demand, and her eye was healed, and she sought to take the veil as a nun with 7 others, I understand, something like that.
She was, sorry for coming in on you, just speaking again about that link between the old and the new religion. There weren't any martyrs, there weren't any Christian martyrs in Ireland. I mean, the church kind of canonized the goddesses and gods to some degree, and there was that link in the ancient spirituality of the land.
I guess that's why the white martyrdom, there isn't the red martyrdom of the blood being shed, but this incredible light-filled white martyrdom of those who seek a way of life that witnesses, just as the red martyrs, the blood-shedding martyrs witnessed. And that light in Bridget of Kildare, apparently, like her predecessor Brija, the goddess, who was the goddess of flame, over the head of Bridget of Kildare could be seen a flame, always a flame. And so when she went as a simple young woman to receive the veil, the bishop actually conferred on her the order, so we're told, documented, of bishop.
So she was actually a bishop.
She was actually a bishop. And
where does that fit into the present situation now with questions about women priests and so on?
Yeah. I think she could be taken as a great forerunner of the women who are already ordained at great personal risk and cost, a patron saint of the men and even priests who support them, who even have been excommunicated because of supporting the ordination of women. Brija of the flame, of founding male-female monasteries, It was all about healing the suffering of the world and tending to the poor and raising up the arts to heal the soul sick poor too. And if we would ever take that, I was just at Kildare and, at the well, they have this sculpture. And in one hand, the left, Bridget holds the flame aloft. And in the other, she has the bishop's crozier. And it's these two together, the flame that will enliven and the shepherd's crook that will protect. That's what it's meant to be. And I think it's got to be recognized. Women have that healing force. And Bridget, given over her goddess gifts to Bridget then sharing that in a spectacular way for decades and decades, and that flame stayed alight at that abbey that she founded until about the 1200s, when it was extinguished by order of Henry VIII or whoever. And I had the great joy to be in Kildare on Bridget's Day, which is February 1st, which is Imbolc and the quickening of the year, which is a pre-Christian festival. I guess that's kind of a good example of where Bridget, the goddess, who presided over the rowan tree in the month of the rowan, which is mid-January to mid-February, that sacred tree then, and the sacred flame and the well is taken by Bridget. And in the square at Kildare, Mary McAleese came on February 1st, 2006, and lit this perpetual flame that stands aloft, a sculpture which represents the oak, the sacred oak tree. And Mary McAleese said, it's even in her name, Bridget. She is the bridge between the old and the new, the pre-Christian and the Christian, our time, the time of the future, the time of war, the time of peace. She's that bridge, and it's this light. It's not just the light to lead the way in darkness. It's the light, I think, what is the Greek word, enthusiasm, that the fire within that's meant to come inside us and give us courage, because these are hard, hard times, and we need that force that the godly women can really embody in special ways.
Shake the hand of a man from the far distant land. Meet him and treat him well. And that young girl so fair, with the short silver hair, she's got a story to tell. So let the circle be wide round the fireside, and we'll soon make room for you. Let your heart have no fear, for there's no strangers here, just friends that you never knew. Good night. We'll be back again soon. And many thanks to Carrie Shishard.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you so much.
Little boxes, little ticky-tacky little boxes, little boxes, little boxes, all the same. And there's a green one,
And a pink one,
and a blue one,
and a yellow one, and they're all
made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.